Hey everyone, how are you? This week, what I'm going to cover, let me just check that's live. Sorry. Yeah, this week, what I'm going to cover. Sorry, I'm back with you. That's a bit of a weird start to a video. So I'm starting a new series. It's going to be super useful for you. Here's the background to it, which was that last year was a really tough year for a lot of people, a lot of my clients, a lot of leaders I work with. And the things they're saying is that they're still sort of struggling personally, still struggling with making sense of the year. And then that makes everything at work a bit harder. So I just think it's a really important time to sit back from that and reflect and help give you some tools, strategies, and skills to be able to personally reset and move forward. Things are a little bit chaos behind me right now, so you can see there's a wall being built, a temporary wall. And that's because there's a big renovation going on, because I know people's lives are a bit complex, so are mine, and that's what's going on for me. But I know everyone else has got stuff going on as well. But we you know, regardless, we keep going. And that's what this is about. It's about helping you take stock of where you're at, reflect on who you are, so that when you keep going, as you keep going, you do that with more confidence. Okay, so let me talk to you about what the plan is during this series. That's the context. Here it is right here. This is what I'm going to cover. What I'm going to cover is, you know, given what's happened over the last little period of time, who are you? And how do I, you know, understand myself better? And if I understand myself better, what ways can I better show up for those around me, so that I can get, I can deliver more for them, but also feel more happy and content within myself. And what I'm going to cover is this. Today, what I'm going to do is cover a model. Sorry, just let me make sure I get the right color. Oops. Let's go with a much broader with that. We're going to cover a model to understand yourself and others. And then over the next sort of 9 weeks, I'm going to cover some big topics. The illusion of control, clearly something we learned in the pandemic. I'm going to talk about values, purpose, and meaning. I'm going to talk about this idea of rigid authenticity, which is the idea of, you know, everyone tells you to be yourself, but what about when that's not okay? Personal responsibility. I'm going to cover presence, significance, gratitude, and then at the end I'm going to give you a framework for implementing and applying these into your life. Sound like a plan? Okay, let's talk about this week's a big week. This is big stuff, right? So let me frame this up, which is, I'm answering no small question here. I'm literally answering the question of, you know, a model of who am I. Now, really important to frame this up before I start is this, which is, to some extent, this is my model. It may not be yours. Okay, so I would argue that thinking about the components of who we are and what makes us up is a kind of life's work. I'm sharing where I'm at with that, but my understanding of this will continue to grow and develop throughout my lifetime, every week, every month, every day. So I hope what this does for you is encourage you just to think about whether you agree or disagree with my model, so that you can start to form an architecture for yourself of, you know, what makes what you're made of. Does that make sense? Great. Okay. Second one is that I'm looking at this in a much more holistic way than any of those simple kind of tools like, you know, Myers-Briggs, you know, any of the tools that you would have done at work. So much more looking at the whole person and, you know, what are we made up of from a holistic perspective. So they're the 2 framing points. Let's get started. So the big picture is this, so you can see that. there's 4 components here. Let me just highlight them as we go. There's first of all our body, the physical self, our mind, the mental and emotional self, our spirit, which is kind of that higher consciousness, and then the way they interact. Those 3 things are kind of the inside world, and then the way they interact with the outside world. Now, before I break these down, because that's what we do in our kind of Western world, where we like to have everything defined. In many cultures around the world, they don't bother breaking these components down. You know, mind, body, spirit, and a derivative of those 3 things is pretty much part of every religion in some way, because it's an essential human experience. It's essential components of who we are. So let me define those components, but suffice to say that to understand these, often it's better to understand them in the whole, rather than, and looking at the connections between them rather than breaking them down. But sometimes we need to break them down to understand them. Yeah. So let's start with the spirit. Okay. So the spirit, I would say, wraps around the mind and the body. And this is the part of you, if you think about it, the part of you that never changes. All right. So everything changes: beliefs, situation, your context in life where you're living, your values, all of that changes over time. But there's that part of you that's that deep imprint. Others, you know, certain, the spiritual realm, and all the spiritual books call it consciousness. And one of the nicest definitions of this I like is that it's the seeds that you are given. So you imagine you're born into the soil, which is the world we inhabit, and the consciousness gives you your unique imprint, a set of seeds that, given the context or experiences you have, may or may not grow into character attributes and how you often operate in the world. Many people say that, you know, they've seen this, it leaves after we die. It's that thing that embodies us and gives us our personality, our own uniqueness. And more than any of the bits, any of the other sections, mind or body, it's got a connection to the whole. And what I mean by that is there's a universal consciousness that connects all of us. And so even though we've got that individual spirit, there's a spirit connection in terms of the whole ecosystem that we work in. That's a bit woo-woo, but I put it out there as something that I believe in. And my question is, you know, what do you believe in? Second component, let's go down to the body now. So this is the physical self. It's the grounded, instinctive self. And, you know, it's all the way from our, you know, all our muscles and bones, and that bit of us that allows us to take action and move and do. But here's what we know about the body, is we're increasingly starting to realize that it has its own intelligence. It drives our behaviors like nothing else. So you look at the amygdala, which is in the brain, but it's part of our physical machinery. If that amygdala fires, it fires what we know of as the flight, fight, freeze response. Freeze. We know that this part of our body is where our gut instinct comes from, and often our gut knows better than our mind, because our mind tells us self-stories, and our mind's often based on perceptions. And increasingly, we're seeing a connection between the health of the mind and the health of the body. So if you look after yourself physically, it often creates much more clarity in terms of how you think and how you operate. All right, so that's the body. And then if we then look at the mind, so the mind is an interesting piece of machinery that's been built. It is the thing that separates us from animals. It allows us to do abstract thinking, you know, to solve problems that aren't actually in front of us right now, but it's also our greatest flaw. Because in that abstract thinking, we create all these problems for ourselves, because rather than responding to what's happening right now, we get caught in the future or the past. And that's going to be a focus around presence of a later video. Daniel Kahneman talks about two types of thinking: slow thinking and fast thinking. So very much that sort of long-term, calm thinking, and very much the fast thinking, which is it's a survival-driven and immediate responsive. Our mind, is what I would describe as a meaning maker. And in that meaning making of trying to make sense of who you are in the world, you've got to be mindful that sometimes it's perceptions. And, always be questioning, is the things that the mind's saying, is it true? And what's doing that is you're doing that from this spirit perspective. Yeah, that's who we are. And we're looking at that mind and going, do I believe that or not? All right, it's a really healthy thing. So you look at the way this works. We go along in life and we have experiences. We're born, as a baby, and we have experiences where our needs, needs kind of comes from our spirit, our uniqueness. They're either met or unmet. And in that process, we start to our mind starts to make sense of and give us a sense of our identity in the world. Robert Kegan's work, where he talked about that sort of self-authoring mind and the socialized mind, which is not the purpose of this video. But over time, our identity as a person starts to develop based on those experiences. And from those experiences, we derive our values, and those values start to give us a sense of identity. Now, for a lot of people, they get a bit caught in that whole process of values and identity. And a lot of the religions around the world, including Buddhism, and a lot of the spiritual work is about, rather than having an identity that's linked in the mind, about an abstract version of who we are, they try to bypass that through meditation and enlightenment. And enlightenment essentially is getting in touch with that spirit part of you and understanding it. You can do components of that without needing to be a Buddhist monk. And I think an awareness of all these components gives you a much broader sense of all the capacities. If we think about this is all the capacities you have available to you to thrive. A physical self, that mental, emotional self, a spiritual self, and all those components can be brought to bear in situations to, allow you to be your best and do your best. So let's just bring it back to you. This is the first part of a series of, videos I'm going to do on you as a self, as an individual, and skills, mindsets, and abilities that you can use to get the most from yourself and do your best in situations. I realized that the last 12, 18 months has been really tough for a lot of people. I think this is a brilliant time to start teaching a lot of this work so that it can make you it can be more accessible to you, and you can apply it to your own life. If you want to talk about any speaking opportunities, coaching opportunities, or working with any of your teams, just get in touch with me and let's have a really quick kind of half an hour chat about what you need and whether I can help you out. Talk soon, take care, and have a great week. And let's talk next week on The Reason and the Road. See ya, bye.